One thing that was kind of interesting to me, it talks about if you are sure of your will and sure of your means. And this brings to mind the introduction to Magick in Theory and Practice. And this may be, I don't know if this is going to be problematic trying to compare too many texts to this, but this is touching on his overarching philosophy in general and the practical aspects of it, which is really important to this liberty portion. In the chapter on liberty, I guess I should introduce it as well. We are talking about discipline, and discipline of focusing the mind, finding your will, understanding what your will is, both your personal will in terms of what you're doing here in this lifetime, and your more overarching will. For which reason he introduces the idea of life as being this ongoing serpentine. This is in this chapter, right? That's right.
The serpentine thing, I think, comes later, but you can sort of mention it now. So the reason the chapter on liberty is seemingly about bondage is that the greatest of all bonds is ignorance. So he starts out saying that you need liberty in order to express the law, because the law is willing, the law is the law of freedom, and you can't do that without liberty. So liberty is obviously a necessity,
and liberty is the ability to act.
Yeah, and but because the greatest of all bonds is ignorance, and people don't know. If people don't know what their will is, what thing they really should be doing in any moment, then they're unable to act correctly, and often even to act at all. You know, this idea of decision paralysis, being overwhelmed with infinite choice. So I just wanted to say that before what you were going about how the rigor and self-discipline and self-interrogation, because this is why this chapter becomes about that. So anyway, so what were you going to say?
Yeah, essentially, we are directed to basically figure out where we are, what's going on, and what our trajectory is. That's essentially what this is about. So figuring out what your will is it is a tall order, but it is the first order of business to set out on that path. I don't know if that's something you do in a weekend, but it's like something that you start doing, and it's interesting because he does mention the idea of the personal will, and he does list a few things that sound like jobs. And this is one of those things that I like to break away from, the idea of encapsulating your true will. Well, I guess the true will being a higher overarching thing. So this is the personal will, but trying to encapsulate your will as being what you do for a living seems like it can be a little bit misleading in a lot of ways to me. But here he's stating that as an important, or as an example of one interpretation of that. So I think this is really where that interpretation comes from, and people tend to run with, because this is one of the ways that people do talk about will in Thelema.
Well, so the aligning of the personal will with the divine will, I think, is where true will sort of originates. I mean, where true will sort of comes into the picture. This is why he's talking about these practices. For example, in our holy books are given sundry means of making this discovery, i.e., which star of all stars you are. So by studying the holy books, you get some of these practices that will teach you who you are, what you're doing, where you're going. Whether or not this is something you do in a weekend, I think it's probably something that you begin doing one weekend and then carry on through the whole course of your life. And so thinking of it as being a career, right? The career of the magician is not wrong. And like, if we spend 8 hours a day sleeping and 8 hours a day at work, you know, another hour and a half commuting or whatever it is, then I think what job you choose really is important, but it's not everything. The will needs to the formula of the true will needs to filter down through every action of your life, and he will talk about that later here.
Darkly Splendid Abodes. Released at midnight on the first and third Fridays each month, and available on Spotify and various other streaming services.